Alrighty, folks, welcome into another episode of Going Into Friday. Dom and I are filming this for your lovely midweek recap, I should say. As always, we're going to go over some trades, maybe go over in a little bit of detail this week, because I think this has been a really good market. If you watched the Wine Wednesday on, July 23rd, for those who are maybe watching this months later, July 23rd, 2025, me and Dom talked about how we were having a rough month of July, but this week in particular has just brought the momentum back that we know and love and has turned us from red on the month to green on the month. So we'll go over some trades that really moved that needle for us and that made that happen. So welcome in, Dom. If you're not anything to share, I'll get us started with the Qs.
Yeah, interesting time here as we're kind of in peak summer, kind of late July now. I know you mentioned your stats on, Good Morning NASDAQ or some videos where you kind of talk about not loving August and September, and we have no clue of knowing what's the future holds in terms of future markets and what we're going to see in small caps or even across the bigger spectrum of the overall market. But I feel like throughout a lot of the summer so far, we've continued to get plays. It's not necessarily always been where you have like 15 great trades to take every week, but I feel like if you've been really particular, and maybe this is just something that we learned really well in the markets of like 2022 and 2023, where it was such a big shift from 2020 and 2021, where we were getting so many plays every single day. And then you had to kind of be better at taking the higher priority plays and leaving alone like the B's and C's and just focus on the best. But right now, the results from the best are really good. We're going to talk through a couple of those trades from this week that have been able to kind of flip the script for us. But it seems like it's weird because I'm not taking a ton of trades. It's just like I'm hitting a stretch right now where the 3 or 4 that I'm focused on that week are all working. And you got to love those weeks because if you were in a good position to maximize your risk reward, it means you're taking some winners and you're not losing. And that's always good. So if you want to kick it off, talk about the overall market and then kick off some of your favorite trades from the week.
Yeah, let's do it. As always, we like to start off with the QQQ, and I specifically want to mention this because it's not like we trade the indexes at all, but I want to Dom's point about like peak summer and some of the plays we're going to go over, not to go on a tangent, but people ask us like, do you ever watch the indexes? Like, do you care what the indexes do in relation to small caps? And 90% of the time, the answer is no. But the longer I have traded, I do tend to agree. Like, if there's a trend going on or a big piece of momentum happening, it does trickle its way down. And so I wouldn't disagree that what we've been seeing this week is because that we are on arguably one of the biggest bounces from the NASDAQ I think we've seen in the last like 20 years. There was some tweet, and I mentioned it earlier, but I forgot where I never saved it, but it was like the QQQ hasn't gone below some moving average again for this many days, and that was like 2 weeks ago. So we are still on that streak. And it's been like 20 plus years since we've seen this level of bounce. So just massive moves. And when you get like this level of bullishness in just the biggest index of one of the biggest index in the world, you get that trickle down effect, which is where I'll take us for our first trade or our ticker for the week was Open. And I did trade it today. We'll go over that shortly. But Open here, I mean, going from 70 cents, really arguably at the lows of almost 50 cents, all the way to $5. So a casual 10x off the lows. Massive move, massive volume. I mean, this had almost 2 billion shares at, when it was trading between $3 and $5. So let's call it 4. I mean, that's like $8 billion. Like, that's insane. That is a ton of money flowing into the stock. Wall Street Bets ended up getting on this thing. And so just a lot of hype momentum around this. And particularly where I, went from red on the month to green on the month was this short for what was first red day, right? If you know me or follow me long enough, or especially in Clover, to see this live, I said, if this can't get over 4, this is going to have a really good chance of kind of collapsing. And it didn't even, it tapped 4 like once, right? Maybe twice, right? How many candles? Really once. It was like $3.99 and then never again. Tried one more time and then just collapsed. Huge bounce, but then still faded later in the day. So I didn't really catch this fade all that well. But I did catch this one really well. I covered half like sub 3, reshorted the bounce. However, this bounce did scare me. If you were anyone who watched this happen in real time, this actually halted up. It doesn't look like it, but at 368, it was a halt up. So it was someone was getting squeezed. And when that happens, you think, is this going to go back over 4 plus? That was certainly a thought in my mind. Thankfully, it didn't, and I covered the rest, on this pull to like I think it was mid 320s. Kind of annoying. I didn't wait for it to get this pull, but again, when there was this big of a bounce, me being and feeling aggressive kind of went away. I was like, let's just cover if we get any decent pull. And so when we get pull from 370 to 320s, I was like, let's just take the rest. So I ended up locking in like 50K on this ticker total. And again, I was down 40K. So right then and there, boom, up 10K. Just from one good gain. That's all you really need in this market. And so I like what Dom said. It's not necessarily that we're seeing an increased amount of trades, but the ones that are happening are just working really, really well. So that was number one for me. I guess I'll mention it because you see it here now. Next up is open on a bounce day. Again, if you follow like the penny stocking framework, which we in Clover talk about all the time, open was due after now selling off from 5 to 2 for a bounce. And so that is the trade you see me taking here. Got long out the open, and then when it pushed to new high days, did get shaken out some size here, which is unfortunate because I did have a sell order literally at 272. It tapped it, but then didn't fill me. So a little bit of fear-based of like, if that's the top, I'm going to be giving all my gains back. So I did sell some there. Thankfully, it recovered, and I sold the rest in 280s or 278 and then 288. Kind of pulling back now, but I do hope this holds and does bounce higher because it would be cool to have a multi-bounce move. This reminds me of SHOT way back when. I'm sure we've talked about it because Clover was live and happened then. Kind of same idea, right? Big red day, big bounce would be really cool, again, to see a secondary bounce day. No idea if we see it, but it would be cool. The last other ticker I want to talk about today that's helped my month, specifically today, is IOVA. This is also another runner that's gone from about $2 to $4. However, this one is a little bit more legitimate, and I can't tell you why. I've just seen enough tickers to know, like, based on how it trades, how much volume it has on average, like, this isn't your scammy company. And one thing you look, the volume. The volume is trading 10 million shares a day versus like some small cap that trades like no shares or no volume, and then out of blue it has news and just has like hundreds of millions. So I went in today knowing that this might not have the biggest of pullbacks, and so I was looking for like 10% max, maybe a little bit more. So I started in short when it broke red-green, got added into the spike, risking yesterday's highs. Then it failed. I added more here, risking now the day highs. And then we pulled back to right around 10% of the day. I think the lows of like 358 or 7 was like right when SSR triggered. So covered it, and even now we are still pretty sideways. So maybe we go lower, maybe we don't. But I locked in. How much did I lock in on that? I locked in about 11K on this one. So very solid there. And again, I locked in 17K on open here. So yeah, another great day now. So now we're up. I don't know. I also have some swing trades that are probably well beyond the scope of this video, but locking in gains there too. So this has been a very big week, turning the month around from down 40K to well over, probably up, 60, 70, 80 at this point. But yeah, those are the trades for me that really turn the needle. And there's even more, which I know Dom, you'll get to. So that's been my week so far.
Yeah, nice to see. And yeah, that continues to be like the lesson for me is it's not in the quantity, it's in the quality. If I can just focus on the best charts out there that fit for me, it's not always about like, going to where Kyle's really happy or Huddy's really happy, or it's about finding charts that work for me, where I can make good risk reward on, that I can win a certain percentage at the time. And it seems like we're still getting them, one or two of them a week, sometimes back-to-back days. Like for me, Friday of last week into this week was phenomenal. And we can start there with IXLL, which continues to go higher. A stock that started just a few, last week or the week before.
Yeah, almost 2 weeks now.
From the 20-cent area up into the 160s, the highs, which is just pretty crazy, pretty phenomenal. But the breakout that I really focused on at the end of last week into this Monday was this breakout over 42.5, really clean price action, gapped up into the breakout on that day right there. Had already had a good history of gapping up, as you can see from the day at 715 to 716 that set that breakout level. And I was just really paying attention, learned a lot of lessons like from the last few weeks that we talked about over in Clover, of not being aggressive enough at breakout levels, trying to be too perfect in being able to be early. In IXHL, I didn't get that opportunity because it opened at the breakout level. But Just another breakout that continues to work really well. Ended up taking this one overnight, selling in pre-market like 85 cents the next day.
Wow.
And what did IXHL do again? It kind of set up right underneath the big daily chart level of 106. And for a little bit of insight, and we try to talk about this stuff over at Clover, try to keep you aware of everything that's going on with these stocks. IXHL in June put out information. I think they're in phase two of, they're a biotech company, something with sleep apnea. And they basically said like phase two data is coming out in July. And that's kind of like the extent of what we know. But we know that it's the 24th day of July right now, and we're running out of time. And, so you kind of have a situation where it's probably a buy the rumor, sell the news, regardless of what the data is like. We're up from 20 cents to $1.60, and probably at this point entering into a little bit of short squeeze territory where maybe a lot of people thought too much too soon and no real news because the data isn't out yet, and kind of expecting that when it comes out, it's going to be a pretty big drop. But the stock has just continued higher. We ended up breaking out over 106. And because of that, unfortunately, on that trade I took where I was buying in the 90-cent area and wanted a move into the 120s, 30s, 40s, like kind of where we're at today, didn't want to push it anymore. We're already overextended on the daily chart, and we ended up getting a clean breakout through that 106, but didn't want to hold any overnight considering that news could come out any day. And if it does, this stock again is up from 20 cents. So who knows? Maybe it's good news. Maybe it goes higher, or maybe it's 50 or 60% lower very quickly. And I didn't want to push it. And we've all been there, Kyle, myself included. My biggest loss ever is a situation like that where 4 p.m. news hits, your stops turn off, and boom, down 80%. And if you have a relatively large position, that could be a frustrating situation. So IXHL has been the bulk of my turnaround. Again, just buying breakouts and letting them continue. And the ones like this that have the ability to sell into the next day, you get so much more bang for your buck than just playing off of that initial move. So IXHL, really great daily chart there, kind of playing off the cheapy momentum from BTOG. We won't talk about that one, but that was last week if you look at BTOG. And so cheapy's running wild right now and really nice to see. But the other trade that I took this week, I also participated in the open first red day that Kyle mentioned. I'm primarily a long bias trader, but when we do get really great opportunities to the upside, I do think that there's a world where I need to participate in them. And so that was really nice to see that one. But ATNF was the other breakout that I took, I believe Monday or Tuesday. What is this, 21st?
Yeah.
Monday.
Monday.
Again, just trying to be aware of these stocks that set highs on good volume, and then hold underneath it for a day or two. And we've seen a lot of this, people calling them third day surges. For me, it's just a breakout, and it's a quality breakout. Open underneath the breakout level, consolidate, give me a trigger, and then boom, you buy through the breakout level. This is one that I got a little patient with, even though it worked and kind of ran from the low twos all the way into the mid threes. But I saw a lot of people do really well on that in Clover. Ended up being a really nice move there, and not even a ton to talk about. Buying opening range highs underneath the breakout level, and then selling into strength. And my goal was kind of 3 to 350. It got that. I accidentally overhold the second half of it and sold into the weakness into the 270s when we broke down. But with the kind of continuation we've been getting with stocks like BTOG or IXHL, I kind of wanted to be more patient on the smaller pieces I do have left on the breakouts right now, just because we are getting multi-day moves and moves into the next day, as you can just kind of see on something I didn't trade, but UAVS, which happened Wednesday into Thursday, really solid breakout and gap up into the next day. Doesn't really run once it opens, but we are getting that continuation. So that's something I want to be aware of when I'm trading. A specific pattern. How is it working right now? Should I be more patient? Should I be more aggressive? Should I be more conservative? And right now, breakouts, although there's not a million of them on watch, the ones that are working quite well.
Yeah. Very nice. I actually didn't even see UAVS until, I saw the breakout yesterday, but didn't look at it this morning, and it would have been nice if it kept going, but this did crap itself pretty quickly. But yeah, that is kind of the highlight trades of the week for us, at least. And again, there's probably a ton of opportunities out there as well that we didn't even take or see. So very, very plentiful market out there. again, make sure to like and subscribe. Stay tuned for the next video. We will then go over maybe what we're watching for coming into next week, the official last week of July. So stay tuned for that video. But yeah, thanks so much for watching, guys, and we'll catch you guys next time. Peace.
Bye now.